Next up, Felicia Lujan to talk about this very building you're sitting in right now. Get ready.
Thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout. I just want to take the time to thank the La Fonda, Ed Pulsifer, Annette Cedillo, both amazing, awesome people. Please stand up. I'd love to have a round of applause for the La Fonda. Scoring the Lumpkins Ballroom, a historical architect, amazing building, one of the most historic, the most historic hotel in Santa Fe, I would say, the oldest hotel in Santa Fe, and also what they say is one of the most haunted. So this evening I decided to do and one other thing I'd like to do actually is thank our vendors who came today, because they're all amazing people. Invite you to visit their tables. We have amazing people here today that you can take a look at when this ends. And then also I wanted to take the time to thank all the people that used to work with us at the State Archives and the State Record Center and Archives. There's several staff members, former staff members, archivists, our former secretaries here. Several of the archivists are in the audience, and I just want to thank them for their continued support, because they were all amazing people to have on staff. So thank you for coming. We're going to take a little bit of time here to talk about Chief Justice Lowe. Does anybody know who he was? Anybody in this audience? So I didn't know who he was either when I started this. I don't know if you can hear me here, sorry. So one of the things that one of our new archivists, Jana Gottschalk, she and I were having this conversation before I started this, after I finished this work, and we were talking about how a lot of times we don't really know what our research is going to reveal, and I think Rick mentioned that at one point too. He discovered the skirt fires. So sometimes we start something with a real loose idea, and sometimes it can be mind-blowing what you reveal. It turns out that this particular Chief Justice, he was shot here in the La Fonda, dead in the 1800s. He actually was murdered. They say there's some of the accounts say in a billiards room, other accounts say that it was in the lobby. There's been, remodeling to the hotel, but we do know the general area. Ed and I were talking about where the billiards room was. So at some point you might want to go down there and look. There's an old sign on the wall that he talked about. But this was actually a man who died at the age of 38. Some reports said 39. By the time he was 38, he was already Chief Justice of New Mexico. Makes me feel kind of wimpy. I'm already 45 and I'm barely a director, but what I will say is this man had really accomplished a lot throughout his career, and I really grew to love this person and admire him as someone from New Mexico history. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are the State Archives in New Mexico, as you can see. We preserve and make available, you can read this yourself, but basically in a nutshell what we do is we preserve and make available the permanent public records of the state of New Mexico. You can see that there's certain periods of government that we, particularly our earliest documents come from the Spanish period, the Mexican period, and the territorial period. The Spanish period documents make us a National Archives affiliate, so we've been affiliate for very many years. I think we're one of 11 in the country. Every year we get inspected by the State Archives. Last couple years we've had a self-inspection. National Archives, federal government, too, is not what is it called? They too experience budget shortfalls. So they were sending self-inspections a couple of years. So we've been an affiliate, and these documents are what make us an affiliate of the National Archives. So a little bit about how I became the Dark Archivist, and that's what they call me. Somebody in the audience here today, she's here, has coined the term Darkivist for me, which I did not use. So Darkivist, Dark Archivist, Lover of the Darkness, you name it, that's my title. So I'm going with Dark Archivist. I've been doing presentations for a while with dark things from New Mexico history. Thus, this is why we wanted to plan this amazing event, and I'm glad with this great turnout. But really just talking about the darker things, the real stories from New Mexico history, things that are creepy, scary, that actually really happened. I chose this ghost particularly because out of, I would say, between 8 to 11 ghosts that have been cited here, one's a bride, there's been a salesman, and there's actually a report, Southwest Ghost Centers Association, where they did the Gurney-Myers method to figure out if it was a truly haunted. They do say that the Chief Justice Lowe is one of the most real stories that this building has experienced anyhow. That's me as La Llorona last year for Haunted History 2018. That's what I chose. And really this quote here is from Amos Tarver. Death is not a period but a comma in the story of life. And I had experienced a tragedy and loss in my family when I first became an archivist, when I was an archivist in the early years with the agency. And I realized working in the archives that we don't die, we live on. We live on in various ways. through words, through what we say, through our actions. So I realized that I worked in a place where death is actually celebrated, and that was important to me. That we don't just end when we die, we live on through archives. So, did this come up here? So this was another, I don't know why my screen looks different. Hold on, momentito. There we go. So another quote that I really like, Horace, I'm giving you just a little bit of background on him here, but so he studied in Rome and Athens. He traveled. He was well known in literary circles. He's one of my most favorite poets. He served in the army following the assassination of Caesar, which is kind of some of the reasons why I'm connecting him to this. I do tend to call a couple of the people through the somehow I came across the territorial period as an archivist, not because I love it, but it seems like most of the people that I ended up choosing were from that period that I studied. Governor Bent, who was scalped, and his scalp was carried around the plaza in Taos. I studied him a little bit. The other one was Governor Conley, who died of an opium overdose, if any of you don't know that. And this story actually made me wonder if he was actually murdered and didn't die of an opium overdose, because you'll see at one point I'll talk about a governor who took over when Conley died, and he died of an opium overdose. But did he really die of an opium overdose? Let's go on. So this is an interesting thing to think about, but when Horace returned home following the war, he was said to have nothing. They had given all his possessions away, all of his things were gone. His father had died, which, if you can imagine, if you weren't here when your parent passed away, he was feeling pretty low. It was a really tragic point in his life. And he was very poor. The only thing that he really had were words. So I would say arguably that Horace probably became a better poet because he suffered so many terrible things throughout his life. So upon his death, bad scholars said that he had no heirs. There was nobody. He gave away all of his earthly possessions. And what they forgot to mention is that he lived on through much more than any of those physical things that he gave away. If any of you have ever looked at his poetry, it is definitely amazing. The words and intellectual contributions he gifted us with live on. We still read Horace's poems. He'll never die now. Horace will forever be in the internet. He'll forever be, when you search good quotes, he'll be here forever. His stories live on. His essence lives on. So I had done a few exhibits early on, and part of that tied into Governor Bent. And I really found it interesting to think that part of us leaves the grave in the form of what we leave behind, other things. Like I say, intellect is one of those. But these were really interesting quotes that were real poignant for this presentation. I thought, I shall not wholly die, and a great part of me shall escape the grave. And people would think, well, is it a ghost? Well, what is a ghost? I mean, a ghost can also be maybe not an actual physical apparition that we see, but anything that reminds us of something could be considered a spirit or an essence of a spirit. And frequently I call it a relic of a spirit, which is something I made up myself, but a relic of a spirit. You see, pluris et umbrum sumus, I probably butchered that. We are but dust in shadows. I love that quote. Pale death with impartial treads beats at the poor man's cottage door and at the palace of kings. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, death is coming for us. Every single one of us. But still, here he has a little bit of light. You notice he tells you to keep the faith. So this presentation really got me thinking about why we don't tell our own stories more often. Why don't we talk about ourselves? Why when we talk about ourselves or our lives, do people think that we're only talking about ourselves, that we're not considering other people? Why don't we use the vehicles that we have to tell those stories? So oral history tends to be where I would say, and I'm coming at this presentation as an archivist with a little bit of historical background in what I researched, but definitely archives are where all of that lives. So as you can see here, there's all different things. Interviews, broadcasts, it includes multimedia, it includes everything we see on TV, the internet, all of that. All of that is all considered oral history of some shape or form. And you can also see that archiving is in there, which I loved. Up there in the left-hand corner, transcripts, journalism, all of that. I was a former journalist. So this kind of thing has always been important to me. This is some of the things that I uncovered when I was thinking about why we don't tell our own stories. And this is some of the psychological reasons I came across something called Solomon's Paradox. A lot of times they say that, and John and I were also having this talk about, when I was telling her what I was uncovering, if we don't have the story in first person, we have to rely on the third person accounts or on the actions, what we did in life that people have interpreted. So part of the reason why Solomon's paradox is interesting in this is because we tend to like to solve other people's problems. We're better at that. Solving our own problems we don't want to do, but when we have an outsider's perspective, it makes it a little bit easier. So I guess psychologists may argue that third person allows for better problem solving. So here we come to part 1, relic of a spirit. So if any of you have heard of Black Robe Justice, I don't know, that's the book that we frequently use in the archives. This book is a really good book. In conducting the research into the life and death of John P. Slow, there was one thing that became evident to me, and that was the great power of words. Words can help or they can be harmful. I also grew to admire the man that was noted in Black Robe Justice as the Chief Justice whom was given credit for discovering the capabilities of Samuel Allison, who served as both historian and territorial librarian. I was also saddened to learn from historical accounts that his 9-year-old son, possibly 11, may have been holding his hand at the time that he was shot in this lobby. So this is Justice Slow. This is, I believe, before he became the Chief Justice. Not everything here is cited, which I love that my bureau chief, I had everybody review it and I told her I'm going to ask people to come research. This is a research plug, so if you don't see a footnote on there, just ask me. But I'm not putting it because we want you to visit the archives. This particular image isn't from our archive, but when something is from our archive, you'll see it cited. 1856 to 1862. John Potts Slow, he was born February 1st, 1829, and he was killed either December 15th or 16th for my research. It was hard to figure out which day it was, and you'll see why it was a very interesting and strange case. But he died, and his tombstone says December 17th, and we can rely on the tombstone as what I would feel is the accurate record. So he did die. His burial date was December 17th here in Santa Fe, though you'll find something interesting about that burial as well. He was an American politician, a lawyer, a Union general during the American Civil War, and the Chief Justice of New Mexico, like I said, by the time he was 38 years old. He fought in the Battle of Glorieta Pass in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in March of 1862, and he was instrumental in pushing the Confederate forces out of New Mexico and into Texas. And he was actually really upset that he wasn't allowed to chase them into Texas. So I think there's several reasons why maybe he wasn't happy with the story he had, because he was really against slavery. And he instituted, I think in February of the year that he was killed, he wanted to remove debt from all slaves. And there was probably a lot of people that didn't really like his stance on that. A quote from page 68 of Black Robe Justice says that though Slow had proved to be an able military commander, his men did not trust him. Largely, it seems, because of a certain coolness of demeanor, which was misunderstood by them. One soldier kept a diary, which read, "We fell in and gave the colonel," this is after they won the Battle of Glorieta Pass, "We fell in and gave the colonel 3 cheers and a tiger." I don't really know what a tiger is. Did anybody here know what that means? Joe, where are you? Valdez, do you know? They threw in 3 cheers and a tiger. He raised his cap but did not speak. How little some men understand human nature. He had been our colonel for 6 months. This is from a diary. He had been our colonel for 6 months but never became known to us. And on the eve of an important expedition, after a long absence, could not see that a few words were indispensable to a good understanding. The quote set the stage for this man, and here you can see how even this soldier believed in the life of the power of words. Had Colonel Slow given his soldiers the words they needed, they would likely have been stored somewhere in the archives and etched somewhere permanently. So this brings us to 1865, and I tried to do this in, when I first started as an archivist, I remember the deputy of our agency, and also I would like to acknowledge actually our deputy state records administrator, Georgette Chavez, and you've already met our state records administrator. But when I first started, our former deputy, Judy Hazlett, I had done an exhibit and she tripped me up on my dates. She says, this doesn't make sense, something's not right. So it was because of her that I started developing historical timelines, and that in itself, and you'll see how I use data. I like to use data in my research, and you'll see how using that data in Excel in different ways, you can reveal a lot of things about history that maybe older scholars from like the 70s and 80s didn't have the internet and couldn't connect dots in this way. So I was able to connect some pretty interesting dots. This is a picture, it's not cited, it's probably now in public domain anyhow, but Lincoln was assassinated on April 14th, 1865, and this does fit into this story. It's an interesting fact because Slow was said to have served as a pallbearer in President Lincoln's funeral. So that was a big deal. We're just introducing you to Slow right now. This is the actual Derringer pistol that killed Abraham Lincoln. Derringers were really popular, I discovered. I learned a lot from doing this. I'm not a historian, I'm an archivist. But Derringers were apparently pretty popular during this time period. And he was ghosted by a Derringer. As you saw the picture earlier. So here I have a quote from page 68. Oh, I already said that one. I'm sorry. I messed up. I put that double. So here we go here. 1867. John Potts Slow was assassinated. I say assassinated. I know it's a strong word, but I really believe that I can say that Governor Bent was assassinated. I can say that John Potts Slow was assassinated because the government knew that their lives were in danger. And as you'll see, this man knew his life was in danger or something was weird. So here you'll see they mentioned the Lafanda. This is Black Robe Justice. The Exchange Hotel, it's been called when it was older. But here they talk about Reinerson. There's all different kinds of stories that Reinerson shot him in the back and that they dueled and that they... But I looked at the criminal record, the criminal case file, and it's not really clear what exactly happened other than one thing I'll read you here shortly. This is the tombstone of John Potts Slow. If you notice anything weird here, take a look at just where he was born, where he died, where he's buried, and we'll get a little bit more into this in a minute. But as you can see, he was only 38, I already said that. He was well accomplished by that age, and I think very wealthy, though the historical record seems to say that he was in litigation and all his monies were tied up. The career path of Slow, he was a lawyer, a politician, a colonel, and then Chief Justice. Technically, I think he was a politician throughout his career. So why did they unearth him? He was buried in Santa Fe after he was murdered, and then they unearthed him in 1869, and they moved his body. But it doesn't really say why. He was moved to where he was born in Cincinnati, but no one really knows why he was moved. But if you look at this timeline, you'll wonder why. Part 2, what did the archival research reveal? So gosh, I just gotta say I turned up way more questions than answers. I mean, a lot of questions when it came to this man. We have, so I guess some of the questions I ask myself is when someone thinks the spirit's here or they see things, there's a lot of thoughts that go through my mind why that could be happening. Is it they're hearing things? Is it is it like that game when you say something and someone's hearing it becomes something else? How the story starts, I always say the story starts somewhere. There's never any, every story is born from somewhere. So why the unrest with this story? What are the actual reasons that we could really point to? So we saw Southwest, I read Southwest Ghost Hunters' report on this hotel, and they were saying too, we need more research. We don't know anything about this man. We want to know who this Chief Justice was. So I found out some pretty interesting things. So using data, and yeah, data for me is the way I'm going to push my research. The most data I find in one area is going to be where I would believe that was the most truth. So I tried to use data, and what I really thought I was going to find, to be honest, shocked me. It was completely opposite as somebody who's real familiar with data of what I thought I would find in these results. But what I thought was maybe people were talking about him a lot, especially in the 70s. That's, I think, when the ghost was actually sighted in this building. Somebody reported to the front desk that they saw a man in a tall top hat with a long jacket, and it was reported that it was that Chief Justice. This is who the person at the time thought it was. There was no documents or anything to confirm like what really happened with the story, and it's probably because they didn't know where to go, so I might contact them. But what I thought I was going to reveal, I used a tool called Access Newspaper Archive, which I love if any of you haven't used. And shameless plug for you to visit the archives. It's free if you come to our building. Your IP address will be recognized on a laptop or on any computer in the building. So this is a super powerful tool. And what this does is, I wouldn't say that this is your research as a historian. It's a good starting point, but you also want to have, as a former journalist, I consider these primary sources, but some teachers will say they're not. But incorporating these and the actual original records, I think, provides for the greatest story. These are also first-person accounts when you look at newspapers of what was happening during the time. So let me go back, I'm sorry. Sheets. So before I go to that next slide, which I already blew it, but, so I really thought when I did this search, I was gonna search Chief Justice Slow from the year that he died, 1867 through, I gave it a pretty good window, at least like 5 or 6 years, and we'll see when we get there. But what I really thought was gonna happen was I thought that a bunch of people were talking about him after he died. Like, that's why he's a ghost. Like, so many people it was like word of mouth. Like, did you hear the guy died? Like, it was that. There's gonna be a bunch of hits. Like, I thought that these numbers were gonna spike. But as you can see, that was the year he died. There was 19. Following that, there was 21, and guess what? The man was exonerated. And then what happened? He disappeared from history, pretty much. I mean, there were some historians that wrote about him, but why 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0? And what's weird about that is that this covers all newspapers, and sometimes it even gets across the ocean in some cases. I didn't search that way on this, but this was across the United States. There was 0 for Chief Justice Slow. So I started thinking maybe it wasn't that the words were spreading around, but there was no words. The words were gone. So you can see how I think words drive things, and in this case, maybe Justice Slow was not happy that the words were gone. Nobody knew what happened to him. So you can see that one of the quotes I put here is a proverb. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So I think there's another quote, and I looked for it and I can't remember who said it, but they say the tongue is one of the only weapons that can cut a man down to nothing. So why did this matter for Chief Justice Slow? He was a hothead. So they say that he was mad all the time. When he was in Colorado, he started in the 1850s up in Colorado. He was expelled from the legislature there for striking somebody. Though I didn't do any primary source documents, I'm just telling you what I learned from gathering information at this point. But at some point, this could become a book or a story. I mean, right now, no, maybe when I retire. But I think what really happened is they censored him a lot, and he was fighting corruption. This is one of the reasons that I really came to admire him, I guess, as a historical figure. But there were stories that definitely he wasn't able to tell, and you're gonna see. But here I have the mouth sewn shut because they were censoring him. He was fighting a lot of things, including slavery. This is why I wanted to talk about Lincoln. So he's said to be a pallbearer in Lincoln's funeral. And if you take a look at this, sorry, I have a floating killed on April 14th in there. That's a mistake. Was he really a pallbearer? I started wondering, could I find any records? Did he stand in the funeral? I mean, it's kind of cool that someone that was, from New Mexico or lived here anyhow, was a Chief Justice here. So I found some historical records, and yes, this is a primary source document, not from our archive. And you can see immediately the picture I showed you isn't on there. So for some reason, he was never acknowledged if he was a pallbearer. Gail mentioned that maybe he was an honorary pallbearer, and I think maybe Elena mentioned that maybe he was on a train, that maybe the train stopped in New Mexico. That we were trying to think of what the story was. But as you can see, he's not in this picture. But if he was really fighting slavery and he was supposedly a pallbearer in Lincoln's funeral, I think he'd be pretty upset if people forgot that. Lack of words. Again. So take a look at this. This is all the people. This is from the Surratt House Museum. Clearly, I cited that. But those are all the Lincoln pallbearers in the April 19th funeral. They're named. Chief Justice Slow is not on there. So I think given Slow's political stance and maybe even his personal stance, his personal ethics on peonage during the territorial period and a lot of other things, he was fighting corruption, I think, with the Santa Fe Ring. One could see why he would be more disappointed, even from the grave, with inaccurate history about what he did. Maybe that's even why he died, because of his personal and political struggles. So relic of the spirit and the power of words, again. Did he know his life was in danger? It's weird that the window is December 15th, 16th, and 17th. I think that he may have known that he was gonna die. Why was his last will and testament filed on the 16th? How many of you file your will while you're dying or the day before you died? I don't know. I mean, is it weird? I think it is. How about this? Elena liked this one. I, John P. Slow, sound mind, in consideration, this is an original document. This is his last will and testament in the archives. In consideration of the uncertainty of human life, what? Do make this my last will and testament. And that is the territorial script that was recorded here in Santa Fe. 2 pages. And this is also a very weird document. He was a sound mind, but he clearly was worried for his life for some reason. I started wondering if his wife knocked him off. Did his wife knock him off with the help of the governor? Why would you think that? Well, we'll see. The legislature, the judicial system, or even the killer to gain ownership of all he had, what did he have? What did the governor and his wife do with all the mining interests that he owned? Oh yeah, he owned a lot of mines in this last will and testament. He owned mines in Doñana County. He owned silver mines, gold mines, but they said he was poor in this document. What I think is weird is the document just calls his wife. It never names her. Well, we know during the time period that maybe, any of those that know history know that might not be that uncommon. But it is weird when they mention the governor as the executor of her will by name. I mean, the governor and the wife are the executors of Justice Low's will. The governor of New Mexico at the time. Did I know that when I started this research? No. But the governor actually executed this Chief Justice will. He was the main executor. He was listed before the wife. Anyhow, what type of litigation did they face? Was that really true? Those are some of the questions I had. Reinerson had a lot of mining interests, like I said. What were the few intimate details that were recorded in his last will and testament? I kind of find it weird that last will and testaments aren't in our own handwriting. I think I heard a radio show yesterday that encouraged people to write their own obituaries. Someone we work with at the state archives, who's the Register Publications, him and his wife passed away. He wrote her obituary, and it was amazing. Why do we let people write our own stuff, write our own words? Why don't they come from our mouths? So what were the personal things that could be found on his last will and testament? Not the corruption, the things that I thought were corrupt or weird. He left a picture to his son. He left a key to the city that he got in another state to his daughter. His children were named, but his wife was never named, which made me think it was even weirder, like they were trying to program her out. For a while, I wondered if it was her that killed him, but the more interesting the story got, I stayed up till 2 a.m. many nights with red eyes at work. I was addicted to researching this. So here you see the picture. There's his wife. My wife shall have it. My wife. He had a lot of land in Denver. He had property in Denver. He left her a brick house there. But yes, she didn't stay there. She moved. I don't know. It's weird. So this is actually a picture of the last will and testament. The legal instrument was filed on December 16th here in Santa Fe County, like I say, but was it when he was on his deathbed? Because he died on the 17th. Possibly. So here, we definitely know that there was corruption that he probably couldn't reveal. He was also silenced here at the New Mexico legislature, and he was fighting with a legislator at the time that's the person who actually shot him here in the lobby. So this was actually a fight that spilled into politics. A lot more would need to be done, a lot more research to really, figure out, this is the beginning stages of that. So, what was his wife's family connection to the U.S. Supreme Court? These were some of the questions I asked myself, because I discovered that his wife was actually derived from a U.S. Supreme Court justice. That was her father. And he was a Chief Justice, so that connection was weird. Why did she move to Washington, D.C., and why is she buried there? So I would wonder why she didn't move back to Ohio. If the governor was corrupt and took everything from her, why did she move to Washington, D.C.? That tells me she's political. I still am wondering about the wife. What was her connection to the governor and the killer? Did she have an affair with one of them? I wondered if maybe she had an affair with the governor or the killer. And you'll see why. So this woman went by a bunch of names. Why can't I find her? Arabella Sophia McLean, Bella McLean, Sophie McLean, Belle McLean Pobrasco, Belle McLean, Arabella M. Pobrasco. Oh, and by the way, when she got her widow's pension, she was Arabella M. Probasco for anybody who would like to look for her. She went by so many names. And this where I found that was in the U.S. statutes at large, 1907 to 1909. I discovered her widow's pension. She fought for a widow's pension, and if she had money, I wondered, she fought a lot for it. I wondered if she actually had money, why? And like I say, she was the daughter of William McLean, a U.S. Supreme Court judge, and Sarah F. McLean. This was weird. So, law reports that there was a curious accident insurance case. Slow was killed in Lake Teresa in Santa Fe just 6 months later. So if he knew he was going to die, maybe they took out an insurance policy together, but his wife was really fighting to get this money. It was only $5,000. She fought and fought to get it, but do you see there on the right-hand side, you can see no claim shall be made under the policy. This is weird. When the death or injury may have been caused by dueling, fighting, of wrestling, concealed weapons carried by, okay, we know now that he ain't getting this money. She fought for it and she got it. I think my boss said something like, well, I forgot what he said, so it's slipping my mind now, but he mentioned something about that. But she did end up getting this money. Why was the governor an executor of Slow's last will and testament? Governor Mitchell, does anybody know him? He was governor right after Governor Conley died of an opium overdose. And so I started wondering if they knocked off Governor Conley with an opium overdose, because it wasn't that too long before this governor took over for him. And then right after he got all the stuff, he left. So what happened to all the property that Slow owned? Who owns it now? I mean, these are all questions I still want to answer, is what I'm telling you. Why did the governor resign right after Slow was killed? So Slow died 67, 68, Reinerson, who's the person who killed him, was tried and got away. And then in 69, Mitchell left. He resigned as governor of New Mexico. What happened suddenly to Slow's legal heirs, or at least one of them? His son dies in 1911 and his daughter dies in 1917, and the article actually says suddenly. There's a couple of things there. Martin Slow, Sarah Arabella Slow Magruder. Oh yeah, that was another name that she had, Magruder. I think she used her daughter's name for a little while. So yeah, they did say that it was suddenly. Was it his wife, the New Mexico governor? So how well did the governor know this woman who went by many names? Her name was not mentioned in the last will and testament of her own husband. Why did she and the governor both die in Washington, D.C.? Why was she asking Congress to increase her widow's pensions if she was well off? She also came from a prominent family. I mean, I mentioned the U.S. Supreme Court. What about Slow's insurance policy? Why did some historians think Governor Mitchell was dishonest? Well, from the research that I did, so many people said that he lied about his credentials. He lied. Every time, he didn't do anything that they said he did. What I will say is that eventually he did become the district attorney of Doñana County. And at first I thought I wasn't going to research this man because I thought I wasn't going to give any sort of time or effort to somebody who had murdered somebody else. But I wondered what happened to him, because that kind of fits into the story. And he did end up becoming the district attorney of Doñana County, and he was connected to Billy the Kid in the form that he was the person who denied the pardon for Billy the Kid. And here again, I'm back to the territorial period. I just did an event about Billy the Kid. It's not that I love it, I don't know why, but the ghosts are calling for me to cover this period, I guess. That's why he lied a lot about who he really was. So I started wondering about the relationships between the two men, and I found a connection. God darn, this is weird. So is it coincidental that they were both from Ohio, that they were both involved in legislative issues closely, that they both served in the Union during the Civil War? I found a picture of them together serving, that they were both lawyers, that they were both connected to the mysterious wife through a legal instrument. Started thinking, let me look at these guys, I want to compare them. Well, I'll say the guy on the left at the top, that's Justice Slow. The guy on the right is the guy she would have cheated with. Kind of cute. I could see it. They were kind of, close. I mean, it's possible. So I wanted to show you that's where my mind was going. I wanted to do a comparison. Maybe. The bottom one is when they were older. I thought it was interesting that Chief Justice Slow looks way like creepy and like more like worn. Like you can tell he's been through a lot. Well, both of them really. I mean, they were in the Civil War, but it's interesting to see how they aged. But I wanted to see if they resembled each other. Everybody during that time period had a beard, I guess, but they did kind of, look a little bit alike. But which was the man who actually shot the Chief Justice, I guess, is my question. Is he the man? This is the man who actually shot the Chief Justice, excuse me. So here we go to the criminal case file. This is 180A. This is actually the criminal case file that sits in the archives. And I did pull it. Unfortunately, I have a real job, and it's the director of the archives. So I don't have time to really research, but I would love to spend more time looking into this. I just very basically glanced over some of the documents and pulled together information for this, but I definitely am interested. Historical accounts say that the day the Chief Justice was assassinated, there were threats of lynching in the territory. People around here were really mad about it. Did this have anything to do with what he owned, or was it possible his stand with regard to peonage at the time was part of the problem? This killer got off. Reinerson definitely was exonerated. And it's interesting that he became an attorney. I wondered if he had practiced law early and maybe he knew how to get off. I found evidence that he actually got several people off for murder following this. Following his exoneration, he actually ran for political office and people were mad. But in John Anna County, he got a lot of people off that murdered people. And you can find that evidence. That the accused William L. Reinerson, this is what the actual criminal case file says. And this is why I tell you this is the document you can trust. The internet, the books, it's good. You can gather information. But when you really want to go to primary source documents, that's in the archives. So the criminal case file said that the accused William L. Reinerson did attempt and make efforts to shoot the said John P. Slow after he had been mortally wounded and fallen upon the floor. That he knows of no other witness or witnesses by whom he can confirm these same facts. So that's Santa Fe County District Court Records, case 180, serial 18163. It says here that he was on the floor, he was already mortally wounded, and he shot him, and his kid might have been right there. So God, I hated this man. Do you know that they actually called this man the tall sycamore of the Rio Grande? Do you know what his defense was? Self-defense. But he was 7 feet tall. Something's weird. I don't know. Okay. So let's go to this. Why was Slow's body really unearthed in 1869? It was during the same time that Mitchell left. I started wondering if they buried loot in there. So there's some arguments at the Battle of Glorieta Pass. Some people believe that they were Union people buried there. Some people believed it was Confederates. I will tell you that I worked with an archaeologist, Guadalupe Martinez, who actually worked on that dig with his wife, and they uncovered Confederate buttons there. So I kind of wondered, maybe they had some loot that they buried with him. Why would he be unearthed? Maybe his family requested it, I'm not really sure. But why didn't Governor Mitchell resign that very same year? What were their interests in Slow's potential wealth, I guess? So maybe the death at the hands of another trapped this relic here. Maybe he's really mad that these stories nobody knows. I found myself telling him, your story is going to be told today. People are going to know what really happened. It's a good thing. Is there more to be revealed with regard to the story of Chief Justice Slow? 100%. So how did the three New Mexico ranches tie into this? So one of the things I found interesting in doing this research is I didn't realize Chief Justice Slow had a connection to Pigeons Ranch, until I discovered he was in the Civil War. I connected the dots one by one. I didn't know who Chief Justice Slow was, anything about him really, not even that he was the governor, believe it or not, and I work in the archives. So this was a really interesting educational exercise for me, so when I first started in the archives, I did some research on Pigeons Ranch because there was a man there named Hyacinth Pigeon who talked funny and weird, and I found that area interesting. So I had already studied the area, and I thought interesting that this character now too plays into something that I've already studied. But on December 3rd, 1867, Chief Justice Slow petitioned the New Mexico Legislative Council to provide a proper cemetery and monument for the men who died in Glorieta. This is why I think he was really pissed off. He didn't get this, you won't believe it. He didn't get this until the 1990s. These are men that died in battle. He was actually petitioning them to bury them properly, and they never did. The story just gets more creepier and just sad. So I can see why he's mad. I mean, like, they didn't do these people any honors. And you know what? It wasn't even the state that actually stepped up here. It was the National Park Service who took over that area and made it a historic area. So I can say that maybe now he's finally getting a little bit of rest, because honestly, he petitioned the territorial legislature, that's TNM Row 3 frame 219. He petitioned them for that monument for the people who died in Glorieta, and they never got it. That monument never erected. So now this brings me to, I think, the most interesting part of this presentation. So in 2014, she's not here, I don't think, but Joe Valdez is here, and he worked with her. That's not her. So somebody that I worked with that was a former bureau chief of the state archives, she's now retired. In 2014, she stayed here with her sister Mia, and they took pictures while they were here, and it was, I think, either Thanksgiving or Christmas time. She got back to work and she was freaked out because they thought they saw weird stuff while they were here. She knows I love Photoshop, so she's like, hey, can you edit these pictures and see if you find anything creepy? This is in 2014, okay? I still have a mess because I'm an archivist. So 2014, these are the actual photos she sent me. And Gail and I looked at this today when we got here, but you can see, and that's La Palueza, right? The restaurant. There's lights, those 3 lights that are there on that wood, if you can see on the right-hand side at the top of the door. That's wood. I'm not sure how that reflection gets there. Now, wood doesn't give a reflection. I mean, it might be painted with glass, but those are 3 lights. We checked today, it's wood. There's also some other weird lights in this, but the one that she was really freaked out about was that window. It looks like nothing, huh? It just looks like a chair with a window. I'm not sure what room that is at, but it looks like a chair with a window, and I was like, oh, there's not gonna be nothing in this. She's hilarious. So, but sure enough, I found something. It was pretty dang creepy. So I wanted to show you guys what I found, what I brought out of the pictures using Photoshop. In 2014, these are the ones I did, but then I created something at the end of this to show you what I see, because not everybody sees the same things. You know, we all have different brains, and I showed some of these pictures to some of the archivists. Some people saw 2 people dueling, believe it or not, Marcus. Some people saw 1 person, some people saw 2 people. I mean, it's interesting to see what I brought out of these using Photoshop. So you can keep taking a look here at this window. And I don't know if you see something coming out right there on the right-hand side. So this is what I pulled out of the image using Photoshop. And people don't think it looks like anything, but it is something coming from a shadow. And Sibel's probably the only one working in this room who knows about levels, and maybe Lynn, maybe a couple other people, using the levels to bring out hidden information. And so adjusting the levels in Photoshop, I was able to bring this out, and to me it looks like half of a face. Did a little bit more work to it, pulled it up a little bit closer so you can see it a little bit more close and personal. Then I decided to dupe it and look at it. This is a dupe of the image, a mirrored image, because I wanted to see if it looked like one face if I duped it, but it doesn't. What does it look like? It looks like 2 faces facing each other. That's what people see. This is what I see. So here I created, and I'm hoping it's gonna play. Doesn't look like it is. How do I play it? Please play. If it doesn't play, I brought it in another way. It's not gonna play. I'm gonna show you it through a different way. So I created an animated GIF because I wanted to show you what I brought out. So this is an animation with an overlay. Anyhow, that's what I see. So what I'll tell you is that was a friend and former bureau chief that showed me that. Now I gotta go back, I'm sorry. So here, so this is my last slide. So what did I really learn in doing this? Like, this isn't just about fun and haunted Halloween and decorations, and like I like that too. But this is also about why it's important, the things that we do. And today I think what I was really left with in doing this research is that when we have no words, people don't know what we're thinking or can't even really tell our stories. So what happens is people tell your story for you. You can see the soldier early on in this story had things to say about his boss because his boss didn't give him those words. So today what I do is I encourage all of you to craft your own spirit. Go out and tell your own story. Let people know who you are so that they have your words to fill them versus the words of others. Not third person perspective, but first. Or via interpretation of your actions. So these are the things I'm encouraging you to do. Write a real letter to someone. Share a memory with someone. Me and my dad and my brothers and sisters have been sending each other all kinds of scrapbook stuff. Send an email message and print it. Okay, do we realize there's the death of the letter? Like now we all do everything digital. It's Facebook, all the stuff we put, nothing glass. So make sure you keep things. If you're sending an important message, guess what? I'm pregnant. Guess what? I'm getting married. Guess what? So-and-so and so died. Guess what? Somebody needs to know that later. So tell someone more about you. Make an entry in your diary. Write a song about a story and share it. A song is one of the most powerful forms of narration or storytelling that we can have. In conducting this research into the life and death of John P. Slow, I learned so many things. There was one thing that became evident to me, and that was the power of words. The life and death of John P. Slow was not in vain. He did make a difference in all of the battles he fought. As you can see, there's great power in words. Poet Eric Overby has said, she tells stories of working beside her father, cleaning out fence rows and his long sling blades and hoe. Her stories help me see, as we work together, that history is being made as it gets told, passed on as it passes by. Eric Overby in A Journey. Thank you for coming.